Communications Officer Veltar sat quietly at his monitoring station aboard the massive space. It's a platform called Serenity's Watch. His 6 thin arms moved smoothly across the glowing control panels as he checked the daily messages from across the galaxy. The Zenthari being had been doing this same job for over 12 years, and most days were exactly the same. The morning shift was always busy with routine transmissions. Trading ships reported their locations. Diplomatic vessels shared their travel. Plans research stations sent their weekly status updates. Altara's large compound eyes could process dozens of messages at once, sorting them into the correct departments without much thought. Then something different appeared on his screen. A bright red emergency signal pulsed from the outer edge of Council space. Veltar's antennae twitched with surprise as he opened the transmission. Emergency calls were rare in their peaceful corner of the galaxy. Most species had learned to solve problems through talking rather than fighting. The message came from Research Station 27, a small facility that studied plant diseases on distant worlds. Veltar had processed their routine reports many times before. The station housed about 3,000 researchers, mostly veterinary scientists, with their beautiful crystal-like skin that changed colors with their emotions. He opened the distress signal and read the original text in the flowing veterinary script. The message was simple and direct. A virus had spread through the station's air systems. Many researchers were getting sick. They needed medical supplies and doctors immediately. The station's own medical team was too small to handle so many. Patience Veltar nodded to himself. This was exactly the kind of emergency the Galactic Council existed to handle. Their medical ships could reach the station in about 10 days. He prepared to forward the message to the Council Medical Division. But as Veltar's fingers touched the transmission controls, a tiny power fluctuation ran through the station's computer systems. It lasted only a fraction of a second.
Ow.
The lights didn't even flicker. But deep in the translation matrix, a single data packet became corrupted. The automated systems processed the message as usual. But instead of routing it to the Council Medical Division, the corrupted packet sent it somewhere else entirely. The computer recognized key words like emergency and immediate assistance, and made what seemed like a logical choice. It forwarded the message to the Terran Colonial Defense Network, 10,000 light-years away. Captain Lee Deho stood on the bridge of the human warship Iron Will. The ship was massive by most species standards, bristling with weapons and armor that could crack asteroids in half. Lee had commanded the vessel for 3 years, patrolling the edges of human space and protecting colonies from raiders. Lee was reviewing the morning patrol reports when his communications officer called out. Lieutenant Park So-young was young, but extremely skilled at her job. Her fingers danced across holographic displays as she processed incoming transmissions. "Captain, we're receiving a priority distress signal," she announced. "It's coming through our defense network channels." Lee walked over to her station. Emergency calls through military channels usually meant someone was under attack. Human colonies often faced threats from pirates or hostile alien groups. The Colonial Defense Force existed to respond to exactly these situations. The message appeared on Park's screen. It's automatically translated into human standard language. But the translation was wrong. The corrupted data packet had confused the computer systems. What should have been a request for medical supplies had become something much more serious. "Colony under attack," Lee read aloud. "Civilian casualties mounting. Request immediate military intervention. 3,000 lives at stake." Park frowned as she studied the transmission details. "Sir, this signal originated from Galactic Council space, but it's been routed through our military networks instead of diplomatic channels. That's very unusual." Lee had seen enough real emergencies to recognize the signs. The message carried Council security codes that were nearly impossible to fake. The coordinates placed it in a system far from any known hostile forces, but the request for military intervention was clear. "How long since this transmission was sent?" he asked. "About 18 hours, sir. It would have taken that long to reach us across interstellar distances." Lee's jaw tightened. 18 hours was a lifetime during an active attack. Every minute of delay could mean more innocent deaths. The nearest Council fleet would take weeks to respond from their current positions. Contact Admiral Kim immediately. Lee ordered.
Tell him.
We have a humanitarian crisis in Council space. 3,000 civilians under attack with no immediate support available. As Park began transmitting the urgent report to Fleet Command, neither she nor Lee realized the truth. Far across the galaxy, Research Station Tau 7 continued dealing with what was essentially a bad cold that had spread through their air systems. The virus was annoying and uncomfortable, but easily treatable with basic medicine. Director Kethmer was worried about his people, but he expected help to arrive within days. He had requested medical supplies, not soldiers. He had asked for doctors, not warships. But thanks to a single corrupted data packet, the most powerful military force in the galaxy was about to mobilize for war against an enemy that didn't exist. The greatest misunderstanding in galactic history had just begun. Admiral Kim Tae-woo was eating his breakfast when the emergency alert sounded throughout the flagship Eternal Guardian. The seasoned commander had spent 30 years defending human colonies, and he knew the difference between routine problems and real crises. This alarm meant something serious was happening. He rushed to the command center, still wearing his casual clothes. Captain Lee's urgent transmission was already waiting on the main screen. Kim read the report twice, his expression growing darker with each word. 3,000 civilians under attack. No friendly forces nearby. Enemy unknown, but clearly hostile enough to assault a research station. The coordinates placed the crisis deep in Galactic Council space, far from any human military presence. How long ago did we receive this? Kim asked his aide, Commander Choi Minky. 20 minutes, sir. Captain Lee is standing by for orders. Stared at the star chart showing the vast distance to the emergency location. Even at maximum speed, it would take his ship several days to reach the station. By then, everyone might be dead. But there was another problem. The attack had happened. In Council space, where humans had no legal authority to operate military vessels, sending warships across the border could be seen as an invasion. The diplomatic consequences could be severe. Kim weighed his options for exactly 30 seconds. Then his decision was made. Signal all ships in the 3rd Colonial Defense Fleet. He commanded. Emergency mobilization. Full combat readiness. We launch within 6 hours. The response was immediate and overwhelming. Across 12 different star systems, human warships received the mobilization order. Crews rushed back from shore leave. Supply ships began emergency loading procedures. Fighter squadrons ran final equipment checks. The 3rd Fleet was the largest military force humanity had ever assembled. 18 heavy cruisers, each one capable of destroying enemy fleets single-handedly. 47 destroyers built for speed and firepower. Dozens of support vessels, carrying everything from medical supplies to planetary bombardment weapons. Most impressive of all were the troop transports. 60,000 colonial marines were preparing for deployment. These soldiers had earned humanity's reputation as the galaxy's most effective warriors. Through decades of brutal conflicts with raiders and hostile aliens, Commander Choi watched the preparations with professional satisfaction. Sir, the fleet will be ready ahead of schedule. All ships report full combat status. Kim nodded but felt no joy. Large military operations meant people were going to die. Preferred peaceful solutions, but sometimes violence was the only language that worked. Meanwhile, at Research Station TO7, Director Kethmer was growing increasingly worried. Not about the virus anymore. His medical team had the outbreak under control, and most patients were already feeling better. The real problem was what his long-range sensors were detecting. Director called Research Assistant Pixtel from the sensor station. You need to see this immediately. Kethmer hurried over to look at the display. What he saw made his crystal skin turn pale with fear. Massive energy signatures were approaching from human space. The computer estimated their arrival in less than 4 days. How many ships, he asked, though he dreaded the answer. At least 60, sir. Maybe more. The energy readings are unlike anything in our databases. Each vessel appears to carry enough firepower, too. Pixtel's voice trailed off as she ran the calculations again. Sir, each ship could destroy our entire planet. Kethmer's hands shook as he tried to understand what was happening. They had sent a simple request for medical help. Somehow, that had triggered the deployment of what looked like the largest invasion fleet in galactic history. He tried contacting the Galactic Council, but the bureaucratic communication systems moved with painful slowness. Emergency protocols required approval from multiple departments. Forms had to be filed, committees had to meet, the process could take days. Keep monitoring those ships, Kethmer ordered, and try to reach the Council again. Tell them we have a diplomatic emergency that could start an interstellar war. Back in human space, Admiral Kim's fleet was nearly ready to depart. The sight was both beautiful and terrifying. Dozens of massive warships hung in space, like sleeping giants, their hulls dark against the stars. Each vessel bristled with weapons that could crack moons in half. Captain Lee stood on his bridge, watching the final preparations. His crew was excited about their first major deployment in months. They had no idea they were about to become part of the greatest misunderstanding in galactic history. All ships report ready for departure, announced Lieutenant Park So-young. Kim's voice echoed across the fleet communication channels. This is Admiral Kim to all vessels. We're responding to an attack on innocent civilians. Our mission is to save lives and stop whoever is responsible for this atrocity. Every person we save matters. Every enemy we stop protects thousands more. Fleet jumped to hyperspace in perfect formation. Their faster-than-light drives created brilliant flashes of light that could be seen from several star systems away. 65 warships carrying humanity's most advanced weapons were racing toward a research station that needed nothing more than cough medicine. At Research Station Tau 7, Director Kethmer watched his sensors as the human fleet disappeared into hyperspace. In 3 days, they would arrive expecting to find a battlefield. Instead, they would find a peaceful research facility where the worst crisis was a shortage of hot soup for sick researchers. Neither side realized. They were about to have first contact under the worst possible circumstances. The human fleet appeared. At the edge of the star system, like thunder made visible, one moment the space around Research Station Tau 7 was empty and peaceful. The next moment, 65 massive warships materialized in perfect battle formation. Director Kethmer was in the station's medical bay checking on patients when the alarm bells started ringing. He rushed to the command center, where Research Assistant Pixtel was staring at the sensor displays with wide, terrified eyes. "They're here," she whispered. "All of them." The main screen showed the approaching human fleet in detail that made Kethmer's crystal skin flicker with panic colors. Each ship was enormous, easily 10 times larger than the biggest council vessel he had ever seen. They moved with mechanical precision, maintaining formation as they approached the station. The humans had arranged their ships in what they called a standard, protective formation. To Admiral Kim, it looked like a reasonable way to secure the area and prepare for rescue operations. To the aliens watching, it looked like a conquering army preparing to destroy everything in sight. Unknown vessels, this is Admiral Kim Tae-woo of the Terran Colonial Defense Force. Came the transmission across all communication channels. The Admiral's voice was deep and commanding, carrying the authority of someone used to being obeyed without question. "We received your distress call. Report status of hostile forces and civilian casualties immediately." Kethmer's hand shook as he activated the communication system. He had never spoken to a human military commander before. The situation terrified him. The massive ships, the aggressive-sounding demands, the casual way they spoke about hostile forces and casualties. Admiral Kim Kethmer managed to say in broken human standard language, "This is Director Kethmer of Research Station TO7. We have a medical emergency here. There are 3,000 lives at stake. Our people are dying." On the bridge of the Iron Will, Lieutenant Park So-young turned to Captain Lee with concern. "Sir, the station director sounds completely traumatized. Whatever attacked them Must have been brutal. Lee nodded grimly. In his experience, civilian leaders only sounded that frightened when they had witnessed real horror. Signaled the Admiral. Recommend immediate deployment of Marine units. If there are survivors, we need to secure them before the attackers return. Admiral Kim agreed immediately. Within minutes, 20 assault shuttles launched from the fleet toward the research station. Each shuttle carried 30 colonial Marines in full-powered armor. These soldiers were humanity's elite fighting force, trained for the most dangerous missions in the galaxy. The Marines wore combat suits that made them look like mechanical giants. Each suit stood nearly 3 meters tall and was equipped with enough weapons to level a small building. Armor was designed to keep humans alive in the most hostile environments imaginable. To Captain Rowe Junesio, commander of the Marine Detachment, this was a standard rescue operation. His orders were simple: secure the station, protect any survivors, and prepare for possible enemy contact. He had done similar missions dozens of times before, but to the researchers watching the shuttles approach, the Marines looked like something from their worst nightmares. The powered armor made inhuman grinding sounds as it moved. The weapon systems glowed with energy that hurt to look at directly. Each Marine appeared capable of destroying the entire station single-handedly. Attention. Research Station Tau 7, Captain Rowe announced as his shuttles docked with the station. This is Captain Rowe of the Colonial Marines. We are here to provide assistance. Please report to designated safe zones for processing and medical evaluation. The word processing sent waves of terror through the alien researchers. In their language, it suggested something done to prisoners or enemies. Combined with the sight of the armored Marines, many researchers assumed they were about to be captured or worse. Dr. Yemtar, the station's chief medical officer, watched in horror as the human soldiers spread through the corridors. They moved with military efficiency, checking every room and securing every area. Their heavy footsteps echoed through the station like the sound of approaching doom. "They're taking over," whispered one researcher to another. Just like the old stories about the Deathworld species. The humans had earned their reputation as Deathworlders because they came from a planet that would kill most other species within minutes. Earth had deadly weather, poisonous atmosphere, and creatures that existed only to hunt and kill. The fact that humans had survived there proved they were natural warriors. Captain Rowe tried to calm the frightened aliens, but his voice came through the armor's speakers sounding mechanical and threatening. "We're here to help," he repeated. "Please cooperate with our security procedures." But the researchers heard only demands for surrender from a figure that looked like a walking weapon of war. They scattered through the station's corridors, hiding. In storage rooms and emergency shelters, Director Kethmer watched the chaos unfold with growing desperation. His simple request for medical supplies had somehow triggered an invasion by the galaxy's most feared military force. So the humans thought they were conducting a rescue operation, but to the aliens, it felt like the beginning of a conquest. Neither side understood what the other was trying to accomplish. The humans saw terrified civilians who needed protection. The aliens saw conquering soldiers who had come to destroy their peaceful way of life. The greatest misunderstanding in galactic history was getting worse by the minute. Dr. Han Sujin stepped off the medical shuttle onto Research Station Tau 7, carrying a portable scanner and emergency medical kit. As chief medical officer of the Third Fleet, she had treated everything, from battle wounds to deadly alien diseases. What she found in the station's medical bay was both better and worse than she had expected. No laser burns or explosion injuries, which was good. But her scanners immediately detected biological contamination throughout the entire station. Readings showed a respiratory pathogen spreading through the air systems. To someone trained in military medicine, this looked like a potential biological weapons attack. "Command, this is Dr. Han," she reported through her communication device. "We have a Class 3 biohazard situation. Airborne pathogen, unknown origin, initiating full containment protocols immediately." Her medical team moved with the swift efficiency that had saved countless human colonies from disease outbreaks. They activated quarantine fields to separate sick patients from healthy ones. Decontamination systems began sterilizing the air. Treatment stations were set up to process large numbers of patients quickly. The human medical response was designed for military emergencies where speed meant the difference between life and death. Every procedure was optimized for maximum effectiveness. In minimum time, they used phrases like neutralizing the biological threat and aggressive pathogen elimination because that was standard medical terminology in their military. But to the alien researchers watching, the human medical team looked like soldiers conducting some kind of biological warfare experiment. The humans wore sealed environmental suits that made them look even more threatening. Their medical equipment was large, mechanical, and intimidating compared to the gentle energy-based healing the council species were used to. Dr. Yimtar, the station's own medical officer, watched in fascination and horror as the humans worked. They moved through his patients with mechanical precision, injecting them with unknown substances and running invasive scans that his people had never experienced before. "They're experimenting on us," whispered one of the researchers to another. "Look how they talk about destroying the pathogen. What if they decide we're the real threat?" The human medical team was actually doing remarkable work.
Ow! Within hours!
They had identified the virus as a simple respiratory infection that could be easily treated with basic antibiotics. But their methods seemed alien and aggressive to beings who were used to much gentler healing practices. Meanwhile, Director Kethmer found himself festoofed with Admiral Kim in what the human commander considered a routine casualty briefing. The meeting took place in the station's main conference room, with several Marines standing guard outside. Admiral Kim was trying to be reassuring, but his presence was overwhelming to the small alien director. The human was tall, broad-shouldered, and spoke with the absolute authority of someone who commanded the most powerful military force in the galaxy. "Director Kethmer, I want you to understand that we take attacks on civilian populations very seriously," Kim said, his voice carrying the weight of decades of military command. "Whatever hostile force attacked your station will be held accountable for these casualties." Kethmer's crystal skin flickered with confused colors as he tried to process what the Admiral was saying. "Please, Admiral Kim, we cannot withstand such overwhelming force. Our people have never experienced anything like this kind of military response." Kim nodded sympathetically, assuming the director was referring to whatever mysterious enemy had attacked the research station. "I understand your fear, Director, but I promise you, no hostile force will threaten your people again while my fleet is here to protect you." The conversation continued with both leaders talking past each other completely. Kim asked about enemy ship movements and attack patterns. Kethmer tried to explain that there had been no attack, only a medical emergency. But the language barriers and cultural differences made real communication almost impossible. "How many casualties did the initial assault cause?" Kim asked, consulting his datapad. "About 800 of our people became sick," Kethmer replied, thinking the Admiral was asking about the virus outbreak. Kim's expression darkened. 800 casualties in the first attack suggested a large, well-organized enemy force. "What kind of weapons did they use?" "Weapons." Kethmer looked confused. "There were no weapons. It was just spreading through our air systems." Kim assumed this meant the attackers had used some kind of airborne biological weapon, which explained the contamination his medical team had detected. This was even more serious than he had initially thought. Unknown to both leaders, a Galactic Council diplomatic vessel had finally received emergency authorization to respond to the crisis. The ship Peaceful Resolution was racing toward Research Station. Tau 7 with a full diplomatic team and the Council's best xenolinguists, Captain Velinara, commander of the diplomatic vessel, was reviewing intelligence reports about human military capabilities. What she read terrified her. Humans had deployed enough firepower to destroy every major Council world simultaneously. If they decided the Council species were enemies, the results would be catastrophic. "How long until we reach the station?" she asked her navigation officer. 18 hours at maximum speed, Captain." Velinara hoped they would not be too late. Every hour of delay increased the chance that this misunderstanding would escalate into the first interstellar war in Council history. At Research Station Tau 7, the human medical team continued their efficient treatment of what they believed were biological warfare victims. The alien researchers continued hiding from what they believed were invading soldiers, and both military commanders continued planning for a war against enemies that existed only in mistranslation. Lieutenant Oh Hai-jin sat in her small office. Aboard the Iron Will, surrounded by translation matrices and communication logs. As the fleet's xenolinguist, she had been studying the original distress signal that started this entire crisis. Something about the message had been bothering her for hours. The young officer had learned 6 alien languages during her training, and she prided herself on understanding the subtle differences between species' communication styles. But this particular message felt wrong somehow. The grammar patterns didn't match typical council emergency protocols. She pulled up the raw transmission data and began comparing it to similar messages in her database. Research assistant Pixdel had been helping her, despite being terrified. Of the human soldiers patrolling the station, a small alien had shown remarkable courage in approaching O directly. Lieutenant O Pixdel said quietly, her voice shaking. I think I found something important. O looked at the data Pixdel had provided. It was the original message in Velinary script, exactly as Director Kethmer had sent it 3 days ago. O ran it through her personal translation program, bypassing the military systems entirely. What appeared on her screen made her heart skip a beat. Medical supplies urgently needed. Viral outbreaks spreading among staff. Request immediate humanitarian assistance. The message said nothing about attacks or hostile forces. Nothing about casualties from enemy action. It was a simple request. For doctors and medicine to treat a disease outbreak, O felt her hands trembling as she double-checked the translation. Then she ran the message through the military translation system that had originally processed it. The corrupted data packet was still there, buried deep in the system logs. A single bit of damaged information had changed medical assistance into military intervention. Admiral Kim needs to see this immediately, O whispered to herself. She ran through the corridors of the Iron Will, clutching the data pad with her discovery. The bridge crew turned to look as she burst through the doors, her face flushed with excitement and panic. Admiral, sir, she called out breathlessly. There was no attack on the research station. The original message requested medical supplies for a viral outbreak. Our translation system made an error. We mobilized the entire fleet to fight an enemy that doesn't exist. Admiral Kim stared at her for several long seconds. Then he took the datapad and read through her analysis carefully. His expression changed from confusion to understanding to something that might have been relief. You're telling me that 3,000 people are sick with a virus, not under attack by hostile forces? Yes, sir. It's basically the alien equivalent of a bad cold that spread through their air systems. Uncomfortable, but easily treatable. Kim looked around his bridge at the officers who had been preparing for battle. Captain Lee, Lieutenant Park, all of them had been ready to fight a war too. Protect innocent civilians. Now they discovered the civilians just needed cough medicine. But instead of anger or embarrassment, Admiral Kim felt something entirely different. He felt opportunity. All ships. This is Admiral Kim, he announced across the fleet communication. Channels, stand down from combat alert. We're converting to full humanitarian mission status. Dr. Han, I want every medical resource we have deployed to that research station immediately. The transformation that followed amazed everyone who witnessed it. The same military force that had terrified the alien researchers with their overwhelming firepower now focused that same efficiency on saving lives instead of taking them. Dr. Han's medical teams, no longer constrained by combat protocols, began treating the viral outbreak with remarkable success. Human medicine was incredibly advanced compared to what the Council species used. Within hours, patients who had been sick for days were feeling completely better. Captain Rose Marines, no longer expecting enemy contact, removed their threatening combat armor and began helping with basic station maintenance. Without their mechanical suits, the humans looked much less frightening to the alien researchers. Captain Lee personally carried elderly researchers to the medical bay. His gentle manner completely different from the military commander the aliens had feared. Lieutenant Park worked with Pixdel to establish proper communication protocols between the species. Director Masmar watched in amazement as the same humans who had terrified him with their military might now worked tirelessly to help his people. Admiral Kim found him in the medical bay, where human doctors were treating the last of the sick researchers. "Director, I owe you an apology," Kim said simply. "We misunderstood your message and responded with far more force than necessary." Kethmer's crystal skin flickered with colors that indicated wonder and gratitude. "Admiral, your people possess such incredible power, your ships could destroy our entire civilization. Yet when you learned the truth, you chose to heal rather than harm." Kim smiled, understanding something important about the relationship between their species. "That's exactly why we have such powerful weapons, Director, to protect those who cannot protect themselves." The crisis ended with both species learning something valuable about each other. The Galactic Council realized that humans were not the mysterious, limited entities they had believed. They had revealed themselves as incredibly capable protectors, whose power was matched only by their dedication to preserving life. As the human fleet prepared to leave, Research Station Tau 7 had become something new. Lieutenant O and Research Assistant Pixel were establishing permanent translation protocols to prevent future misunderstandings. Dr. Han was setting up a joint medical research facility to share human medical advances with Council species. Admiral Kim's final message to the Galactic Council was simple but powerful. When innocent people call for help, humanity will always answer. The greatest misunderstanding in galactic history had become the foundation for the strongest alliance the galaxy had ever seen.